can have a discussion about this. So first and foremost, you started by saying, I feel like. It's really important that we know what you think like, because a big problem is that people are thinking, are feeling, and they're not really thinking anymore. Secondly, you brought up toxic masculinity. I believe toxic masculinity exists, but it exists inside of radicalized feminists, right? Where they're thinking that they should be able to own and control society because they're marching in the street with pussy hats and saying that they demand justice for a free and fair election, like they did with Donald J. Trump. I don't like this trend where we're trying to turn men, and you call it, masculinity is masculinity. I like masculinity. Masculinity is actually the one thing that saved me in life. I was grateful to have my grandfather, who was the strongest example of what it means to be a man, right? And because of that, having that structure, it actually saved me because he taught me personal responsibility. He taught me to have a relationship with God, right? And yes, he's a man's man. He did everything with his hands. He worked on a sharecropping farm from the time he was 5 years old. Today, that archetype of what a man is being taught that there's something wrong with it, that there's something that's implicitly violent about being a man, and that's wrong. And I think the people that are harmed the most by it, by the way, are women. Women are harmed the most. When you break down men and strong fathers, we are the ones that suffer the most.
And also, can I just say that, you know, men commit suicide at faster rates than women. Women actually live longer than men. Most men are actually in prison, and most men, more than women, are homeless. So
women graduate more from college. In what way are we suffering? What statistic do you feel that women are suffering and men aren't? Because there might be a meninist. There might need to be a meninism movement.
You have a female prime minister.
I would just say, I mean, there's a lot of things to address there, but to begin with, what you say about having a strong grandfather, a male figure, if you're saying that you've internalized these things, these messages that he taught you, then surely there's nothing inherently masculine about those qualities. I mean, I don't understand how you're defining masculinity.
I don't understand how you're defining it.
Yeah, why don't
you define it?
Why don't you define it?
Because you're the one that so you should define what masculinity means to you.
Well, I mean, it depends. I would say masculinity now, obviously, just being a social construct, literally nothing more than a set of expectations that are placed on someone.
So then how can you call it, if it's a social construct, how can you call it toxic?
Because social constructs can be toxic. If you have a patriarchal society that is sending a message that men need to be dominant or they need to be, I know you don't like the word violent, but I think there's something violent about it.
About masculinity?
No. About the sort of masculinity that we have now, this toxic.
What makes that a construct, though? In order for something to be a construct, it has to begin as a norm, which a majority amount of people follow. A majority of people
if you have a patriarchal society that is sending messages that men need to possess certain qualities, and I believe the qualities that they're suggesting should be adopted are bad.
Which quality? I just need to know what exactly you've seen when you've said that is an example of toxic masculinity.
I think men feeling that they need to dominate spaces physically and speaking over women, interrupting women, belittling them.
Yeah.
Do you see how good I'm being?
I mean, you can.
So, just a question. So, you just said when men interrupt and dominate spaces. Were you a toxic feminist when you interrupted me when I was on stage?
No, I was interrupting something.
I'm just asking.
But I fundamentally don't believe it.
I'm just asking because you're saying that somebody interrupting someone is now a symbol of toxic masculinity. You just interrupted me on stage, so are you a toxic feminist?
I wasn't interrupting you because I didn't.
You went bullshit.
Yeah, because you were talking
bullshit.
Because you were talking bullshit. I didn't interrupt you because you're a woman. I interrupted you because I didn't believe what you were saying. It's not that I didn't believe what you were saying.
But maybe that's what men do sometimes? Is it possible that men sometimes interrupt because they disagree with what women are saying and not because they're toxic masculinity in the air? Like, do you get what I'm saying? Is that you're coming up with terms and sometimes people just interrupt. I'm fine with the fact that you interrupted me. It happens all the time and I'm not holding that against you. I'm just using it to prove a point that you've created an entire concept around when men interrupt women, but you literally just interrupted me and you don't identify as yourself as a toxic feminist.
No, Because I interrupted you on the basis that I didn't agree with the politics you're espousing, both of you.
Well, maybe men
Not
are
because
just
I don't
disagree
believe
with
in
what you're saying.
because you're a woman. The fact that you're a woman is completely irrelevant to me.
But maybe
what
it's
you're
irrelevant
both
to men as well when they interrupt people.
That's
Men
not the
interrupt
case.
other men interrupt
That's
women.
not the case.
We're
There's
society.
a culture of men's voices being valued more than women's.
What is your metric for
Give
this?
us one piece of data.
Yeah,
One.
like a data.
Any
You
piece of
can't
data.
just say that there's a culture of men interrupting women. What's your data point for
Any
this?
kind of interpretivist data where you're looking at interactions, at dynamics, you can see. I mean, what do you want me to say? Like a
Like
statistic?
a fact?
Yeah.
Any fact.
Any kind of.
How about the stuff on the news?
A recent huge cultural example, maybe?
So can I ask a question? Do you think we live in a patriarchy?
Yes.
Why do women live longer than men? Why are men more likely to commit suicide? Why do women
I'll tell
compose
you-
50+% of
I'll tell you
college
Why do we
graduates?
control 89% of the spending power within households if men are the ones that are going out and making all of the money, as we like to
Because
say?
women have the sole responsibility of caring for the house and the children.
So
they're
it's a
not
patriarchy that
working.
allows women a lot of responsibility?
Within a household, within a certain sphere, not a powerful one. The household is not
Then
a
why are
powerful
majority of
sphere.
business startups women, majority of master's degrees, and majority of
And
doctorate
also,
degrees
can
in
I
the
say,
States?
the thing about women living longer, married women live the least long. Unmarried women live longest because they do not have the responsibilities, the emotional labour of being
Marriage
with a
is
man.
emotional labour.
Pardon?
Marriage is emotional labour for women, and that's.
It's a great point.
What? No, because the way that women support men, like, it's a huge
but
part.
we live in a
They support each
patriarchy.
I'm not
other.
saying no, they don't. No, they don't. I'm talking
But so
about.
this is sort of, I appreciate the discussion that we're having. This is, you're such a perfect reason for
Because
I
you're all
could never be
emotion.
a feminist,
No
because
facts.
everything that I just couldn't. It's like, you don't really know why you're calling it toxic. You did the
No,
exact
I
same
do.
thing,
I
but
know
you decided that
exactly
when
why I'm
men
calling it
interrupt, it's
toxic.
because you're a woman. But you decided that when
it's
you
not.
interrupt, it's just because you had a differing
You asked
opinion.
me for one example.
I know.
of toxic
And then you
masculinity,
say
I
stuff
told
about
you
the
people
marriage and
interrupt.
breakdown as an emotional labor. There are women, just so you know, that aspire to get married and have children and stay at home and raise
that's
good
okay.
children. And
I
that's
agree.
okay.
It's completely
So, but why are you now making it seem like that puts us in a position that's less than man? Want to create a society? Be the person that raises every individual that's in society. Feminism has made it seem like there's something wrong with being a mother, that there's something wrong with being a wife. And everything that you just said is that.